The first time I realized how far this whole thing would go was the night 3 black SUVs came roaring into our cul-de-sac and rolled straight into my neighbor's driveway. The same neighbor who had spent weeks screaming that my backyard antenna was some kind of spy tower. She stood there, in her robe, clutching a bent piece of aluminum like it was a sword. And the FBI told her flat out to drop it. I didn't need fireworks or applause, just that moment. Her knees wobbling, neighbors whispering from behind curtains, kids' bikes abandoned mid-ride. That was enough to know the tide had turned. But let me back up, because it didn't start with federal agents. It started with a hollow clank outside my bedroom window. One morning, I woke up not to birds or traffic, but to the sound of metal against wood, like someone trying to rip a flagpole out of cement. I pulled the blinds, and there she was, Donna, president of the Oakwood Ridge HOA, the self-appointed queen of our quiet cul-de-sac, yanking on the aluminum antenna I had bolted beside my garage. She looked ridiculous, arms straining, robe flapping, like she was auditioning for some Olympic event. Then the hinge snapped. She toppled backward into my flower bed, and she came up holding the antenna base like a war trophy. It would have been funny if it hadn't been my property. I didn't storm outside screaming. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped photos through the glass. She muttered to herself about community standards and ugly contraptions. Had no idea I was catching every angle. The antenna wasn't even for fun. It was a licensed high-band receiver I'd been using with a research group for weather data. Nothing shady, but complicated enough that the average gossip couldn't wrap their head around it. And that's exactly why she hated it, because she couldn't understand it, couldn't put it in a neat little HOA rulebook. So she decided it had to go. When I finally stepped outside, calm as ever, she spun around waving the bent pole at me. "Your ugly stick is down," she announced. "Neighborhood looks decent again. You're welcome." I tilted my head, pretended to admire her handiwork. "Donna, you just trespassed and destroyed my property before breakfast. That's impressive efficiency." She planted the base in my driveway like a victory banner and told me the HOA board had voted it out. Section this, subsection that. Codes she pulled out like they were gospel. I just stared at her. Because the HOA wasn't law enforcement. It wasn't the FBI. It wasn't anything but a handful of retirees who liked to argue about mailbox paint. But she kept doubling down. "That thing could be spying on us. You're listening to our calls." I almost laughed. "Do you even know how antennas work?" She folded her arms. "I know suspicious when I see it. And I'll escalate this." Escalate, her favorite word. She stormed off, dragging the metal like a medieval lance, and curtains up and down the street fluttered, with neighbors peeking out. My phone buzzed with texts. "Did she really rip that down? You should call the cops." I didn't. Not yet. I sent the pictures to my attorney and poured a cup of coffee. This wasn't just an HOA squabble anymore. This was going to explode. By noon, she had plastered every mailbox with a so-called emergency bulletin, bold letters warning of unauthorized surveillance equipment that she had bravely removed for everyone's safety. At the bottom, her signature, Donna, HOA president and community watch chair. I couldn't stop chuckling. She thought she was the hero. What she didn't realize was that by yanking the antenna, she had triggered error logs, alerts, and a whole lot of federal attention. That receiver was tied into a research network, and the disconnect didn't just vanish. Someone far bigger than our HOA now had Oakwood Ridge on their radar. That evening, she strutted up to my porch, dropped the mangled antenna parts on my welcome mat, and barked. "This junk is evidence. Replace it, and I'll file an injunction." The board has spoken. I leaned on the doorframe. Evidence of what? Your burglary skills? She narrowed her eyes. Don't test me. I have friends in law enforcement. Perfect timing, because just then 2 dark SUVs rolled in, silent, unmarked, but unmistakable. Neighbors froze mid-step. Kids ditched bikes in the grass. The agents stepped out, badges flashing. Donna's jaw dropped. One of them pointed to the bent metal in her hands and said, "Ma'am, that's federal property. Please put it down." The clatter of aluminum on concrete was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. The neighborhood buzzed for days, whispers running faster than lawnmowers. Some thought the feds were here for me. Others thought Donna was secretly under investigation. I kept my cool. But Donna, she couldn't stand losing the spotlight. The next week, she called an emergency board meeting, passed out invitations like she was summoning us to Congress, and unveiled her plan, a new bylaw giving the HOA power to tear down any suspicious device by majority vote. In short, she wanted legal cover for what she had already done illegally. Some neighbors clapped. Others looked uneasy. My friend Mike raised his hand. "Donna, isn't this just to justify what you already did?" Her smile twitched, but she snapped back. "Do you want federal agents on our street again? This is for your safety." Fear was her weapon, and she knew how to swing it. For a moment, I'll admit, I started doubting myself. Maybe the easiest thing was to back down, take the antenna down for good, stop being the target. Late at night, sitting at my kitchen table, I thought, was I selfish? Dragging my whole street into this? Maybe she was right that I was the problem. Maybe all the sideways glances from neighbors meant they believed her. I felt small, cornered, ready to just walk away. But then I remembered, I hadn't broken a single law. She had trespassed, destroyed property, spread lies, and now she was forging rules to keep her grip on power. That's when I decided, no, I wasn't going anywhere. She wanted escalation. I'd let her escalate herself right off a cliff. And escalate she did. She started issuing fake citations, official, looking notices with seals she'd printed off clip art, demanding fines paid directly to the HOA treasurer. People got cited for leaning mailboxes, mismatched curtains, a grill on the deck. I got one accusing me of ongoing espionage activity. I posted mine in the group chat with the caption, "Anyone else get a letter from Donna's Fantasy Police Department?" Replies flooded in. Half the street had one. The anger turned on her, not me. Donna, though, saw enemies everywhere. She patrolled at night with a flashlight, whispered into a tape recorder, spray painted "We see you" on my curb. Neighbors started forming little alliances, sharing screenshots, checking each other's yards. She thought she was building an army. But what she created was resistance. And I documented everything: photos, timestamps, recordings, a dossier that grew thicker by the day. The breaking point came one night when she dragged speakers onto her lawn and blasted the cult sack with a distorted tirade. "The traitor lives among us. He must be removed." Spotlights swept across driveways until they froze on my house. Kids cried. People panicked. And then came the sound I'd been waiting for. Engines low and heavy. 3 SUVs roared in, lights flashing, blocking every exit. Agents poured out, calm and deliberate. Donna stood in her window, silhouette wild, waving a talkie like a sword. "You can't take me!" she shrieked. The lead agent held up a badge. "Ma'am, step away from the equipment. You are under investigation for obstruction and fraud." She laughed, high and broken, pointing at me. "He's the spy! Arrest him!" The agent didn't even glance my way. "Last warning, ma'am. Step down." She bolted inside. Minutes later, they led her out, eyes wide, screaming about conspiracies. Not one neighbor moved to defend her. The silence afterward was heavier than any shouting. People gathered in clusters, whispering. Pam, her loyal sidekick, wept quietly. Gerald, the other bored crony, turned his back. The rest just watched as the SUVs swallowed her whole. For the first time in months, Oakwood Ridge felt normal. Kids played basketball in driveways. Folks lingered to chat without glancing at Donna's blinds. The HOA held an emergency session, voted her out as president. Her house sat dark, curtains drawn, and nobody missed the sound of her voice blasting from a bullhorn. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. My victory was standing on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the place settle back into itself. Donna had torn down my antenna, tried to paint me as a spy, built herself up as some suburban dictator, and in the end, she tore down her own throne. All I had to do was stand firm, keep receipts, and wait for justice to roll down our street in black SUVs. And if there's one thing I learned through it all, it's this. People who rule by fear always think they're untouchable, right up until the moment they're not.